Genius. Hi, I'm Michael Bay, director of Hollywood hits such as Transformers. And I demand things to be awesome. Awesome pussycat. Awesome barbecue. Awesome pool. And you know what the word for that is? Awesome? Bingo.
You know, I've been thinking a while about how to approach a Michael Bay video. Basically, I've never been a huge fan of Michael Bay's, but other than some admittedly terrible films, most of them Transformers sequels, I find a fair amount to enjoy in just shy of half of his output. With his new movie, 6 Underground, coming out, which looks about as quintessentially Michael Bay as you can get with all of his impulses dialed up to 11, I found what I wanted to say.
You want to get out and compare, or should we maybe think about going?
This guy is truly capable of solid narrative work, and has an obviously incredible visual eye. He does have an appreciation for comic timing, and he knows how to pull emotions from the audience. He can handle wonder. He can handle chaos. He can handle comedy.
Glenn, shut up!
No, you shut up! Don't talk to me! Don't talk to me, criminal!
Oh, sugar rush.
What he often can't seem to do is mesh all of those things together into a cohesive, linear whole. Michael Bay can be great. He can be terrible. But the only thing he seems to be consistently is inconsistent. And I'm not just talking about the general macro quality of his films, or the quality of what's in his films, where everything in his work is just across the board bad. No, Michael Bay's films, most of them, have everything they need already in them to be at least better films. The biggest issue for me, the thing that brings it all down, is how little he can focus. He puts so much stuff in that the films end up so tonally and narratively inconsistent that things often fall apart by the end. If Michael Bay could just tone down his impulses for extended chaos, for puerile humor, for commercials, almost every one of his films could be better. I'm not talking removing those things, I'm just talking about letting what kind of film he is making lead the creative choices. And that would often mean just directing slightly differently or cutting things down in the edit. Though many are involved in a Bay production, and he often works with many editors and screenwriters etc. from a large pool that he draws from, the weird thing is that what I would call his inconsistencies consistently happen in each film.
God, I'm sozzled.
Even if he didn't write the film or edit it, or the team around him is completely different, the same issues appear.
That a real law?
Yep. Romeo and Juliet, huh?
He's famous for getting himself incredibly involved in everything from the editing to the CGI to the sound design, and that's clear. He is drawn to certain material which he then seems to expand with his own impulses into what becomes a Michael Bay film. The fact that his films are so overlong, so stuffed with everything, and that objectively a lot of that is actually very watchable, proves usually that there is a better film within the tonally confused, bloated whole that is released to the world.
Was that a bad guy?
The most egregious example of this for me is perhaps Transformers Dark of the Moon, which I think is the best of the Transformers sequels, and that is admittedly very faint praise. The first Transformers film is actually not that bad if you take it as mainly a comedy, which is actually the best way to watch most of Bay's films, then it works pretty well. It ties Sam Witwicky's story into the Autobots nicely and melds the humour alongside establishing plot smartly. Sure, people love to trot out the Bumblebee lubricating on John Turturro clip a lot, but for someone who had little affinity for Transformers before this, like me, it tonally fits the film Bay was making. The idea of a kid's life colliding with this galactic war and how the problems of being a teenager and finding his place in the world informs the relationship between him and the robots works for the most part. Apart from the clarity of action, it's not really that far off the tone and quality of Bumblebee for me. Dark of the Moon does not work the same way.
I'm Wang. Deep Wang.
Autobots, retreat!
I'm so sorry. That is the old me.
See the sidewalk down there?
Now, as much as I said it is the best sequel, I've seen few films as tonally confused as this.
Did you eat a lot of paint chips when you were a kid?
It is pretty much a film of two halves.
Seal off the city.
It literally cuts to black, moving from one tone to another. With the first part, this dark tale of conspiracy and impending doom, mixed with an annoying story of Sam who seems to only complain about how apparently awful his life is.
My dad gets here and I don't have a job. He's gonna spank me. You know, it's go time for me.
All right, tonight I'll give you a job.
You could cut so much of what goes on with Sam in the first half just to get to the far more effective second half. And when the battle does start, most of the weird humor we had to put up with vanishes. It is an uncomfortable mix, both in a narrative and tonal sense. It's as if Bay doesn't trust actual character or general establishing of story will ever be exciting enough for an audience. By stuffing in these often uncomfortable and usually overlong bits of comedy that almost never further the plot, he's just delaying us getting to what we actually came for.
Why is Chantel using what appears to be a red cup from the red floor when we are on the yellow floor?
It's an action scene, but look at how in his first film, Bay does not trust the drag race between our heroes and the villain could be exciting enough.
Just punch it, man. Just punch it. Go!
I mean, they're just driving forward in a line, right? How could that possibly be enough for the audience to focus on? Ignoring that perhaps what is happening inside the cars and the tension around the outcome of the race might just be enough. Remove from that, the real issue with the Bad Boys films for me are their extended scenes of comedy that stop the narrative momentum dead.
Watch the door. You know, like the cops do in the movies. They sit on a stool. You know, I got a magazine and everything. And I don't let anybody in or out type of thing. You know? I mean, seriously, because, you know, all kidding aside, I want to help.
And of course, those very extended action sequences that do little to further the story. Look at the 2.5-hour Bad Boys 2. Do we need this scene?
Why you putting on? I just got out of jail and I ain't going back.
Do we need 2 scenes of the heroes driving to avoid stuff?
Oh, shit.
Do we need this chase to go on for so long? Bad Boys should be action comedy, don't get me wrong, but the best action comedies merge the action with the comedy. Hell, films clearly inspired by Bay have done it far better. A lot of the jokes in Bad Boys would land more effectively if the film was simply shorter. All but one of Bay's films are over 2 hours. Most hover around the 2.5-hour mark. In contrast, one of Bay's biggest influences, Tony Scott, kept his films to around 2 hours or less. He also often had comic moments and extended scenes of chaos, but they always helped further the story, and his stylistic flourishes were there to represent the psychological state of the character. Like Bay, there are tonal shifts in Scott's films, but again they feel thought out, designed to elicit reaction. Bay just seems to forget the film was funny earlier, or at least that is how it feels. Perhaps the biggest issue is that Bay is just too powerful, with too much money to play with. Take for example the confusing Transformers sequels that cost a hell of a lot of money, and compare them to Pain and Gain or 13 Hours which he made between them. Whilst the former have so much going on, so much noise and tonal shifting and general lack of focus, the latter cost way less and are far more effective films. Bay can make a relatively small budget look far bigger, and the limitations placed on him as an artist seem to push him to make much more consistent, usually shorter, cinematic experiences. The billions Bay's films have made put to shame most filmmakers, and the guy's operating on a level of control over the frame that few will ever hope to achieve. But when he is free to live out his wildest cinematic impulses, extend sequences to as long as he finds them funny whether anyone else does,
Oh, wow. Great.
and of course live out any shot he wants over and over, regardless of what it does for the story, he will seemingly always make a lesser work than the ones with limitations. Though I think all are imperfect in their own way, of the 12 films Bay has done, I like 5 of them enough to rewatch them. The Rock is an undeniably entertaining roller coaster.
Welcome to The Rock.
That whilst I think people remember the action as being a little better than it actually is, for the most part works. A lot of that is thanks to the casting, but nobody can accuse any of Bay's films of lacking a strong cast. He clearly has a way with actors, and understands their importance.
Both out.
I mean, look at just how well Michael Clarke Duncan sells a bit part in my next favourite Bay film, The Island. Apart from some scenes of bombast which never feel too out of place, in general The Island is a fairly subdued and successful film. He followed that up with a surprisingly good adventure containing at times astonishing CGI, combined with fantastic practical work, something he is almost unmatched at pulling off. Pain and Gain, whilst full of reprehensible characters, at least knows that about them and makes the most of their true crime caper. And finally, 13 Hours The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi is typically overlong and chaotic, but other than that does a good job of restraining Bay's usual tendencies to give a Black Hawk Down light story of American heroism. Again, much of this is admittedly faint praise, but to say he is terrible is simply untrue. He's just wildly inconsistent and needs limitations to focus his impulses.
Can you stay focused? What are you talking about? I'm focused. Yeah, focused on all this scattered ass around here.
Give Bay a quality script from established writers that balances action and humor but never allows one to overwhelm the other.
There's shit in my car.
And a simple concept that is easy to not lose sight of amidst the chaos, and you can get real entertainment.
I love pressure.
Could we get that with 6 Underground? The signs are there, but I haven't seen it. I guess soon the comments will let me know if we do or not, but one thing is for certain, I will be there day one to find out. It is being marketed as pure, unadulterated Bayhem, which can lead to decidedly mixed results.
You see that? Yeah, you see that?
We can only hope that this time he has been able to weave all the disparate pieces together into something consistently batshit crazy. If anything, it is Bay's shortest film, save for the first Bad Boys, and that can only be a good thing.
I wasn't sure it would work. I mean, I wasn't sure. I had a suspicion, but this is all so fucking dangerous.
Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of future videos by me. Let me know what your favorite Michael Bay film is if you agree, disagree. Thank you.